Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on RSBN Live on this very, very busy news day. Of course, the tragedy yesterday with the American Airlines flight and the Black Hawk helicopter. I'm Matthew Alvarez alongside Robert McNeely as we get ready to go to the press briefing room to hear from President Trump.
Yes, he will be here in approximately on the schedule at the top of the hour, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. And this is very sad news. Last night was a clear day over Washington, D.C., a commercial flight, American Airlines, heading towards from Wichita, Kansas to DCA, that's Washington Reagan, something very normal for us. We know people that go in and out of there on a daily basis. 64 souls lost aboard the commercial flight, as well as 3 other military officials on a Black Hawk helicopter. This has now moved from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, as we heard earlier from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We know that the NTSB will be leading this investigation, and there were multiple press conferences this morning, whether it was Mayor Wu in Wichita or Mayor Bowser, of course, in D.C., alongside Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
So we know this all happened around 8:48 last night, 8:48 p.m. Eastern time, as you take a live look at the recovery efforts there in the Potomac River. Obviously, a huge tragedy for our country, and we know that President Trump will be sharing a statement with the American people in about 30 minutes from now, but he might come out early, or obviously he'll be right there at 11 regardless. As you look at the photos from last night with this tragic event, again, we're told this, to your point, Robert, American Airlines Flight 5342, Wichita to the final approach there at Ronald Reagan Airport, at Reagan National Airport. That's when that collision happens with an Army Black Hawk helicopter. 60 passengers on board the American flight, 4 crew on the plane, 3 soldiers from on the Black Hawk helicopter. President Trump straight up saying on Truth Social yesterday the airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. He said it was a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. He asks questions here saying, why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? It's a bad situation. It looks like it should have been prevented. Not good. And then President Trump, of course, speaking on Truth Social through a statement there, which will go to the White House here in just a minute inside the press briefing room. But I want to read the statement from President Trump here, Robert. As we know, President Trump yesterday reacting in real time to what's going on. We all have the same questions, like how could something like this happen? But let me get to that statement by the president pretty recently. He says, I have been fully briefed on the terrible accident which just took place at Reagan National Airport. May God bless their souls. Thank you for the incredible work being done by our first responders. I am monitoring the situation and will provide more details as they arise. That was an hour ago. So, Robert, we're going to be going to that press briefing room here soon.
And we'll see if he has any more details to share at the moment of what his office has received. Of course, this is unfolding for the Pentagon as well as the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. But we heard from Pete Hegseth earlier. They are not releasing the names and ranks of the military officials who were involved in this crash quite yet. And there will be what looks like a 48-hour moratorium on any flights regarding the military over the Potomac. Of course, if you live there or have visited recently, you know that this is a routine thing, part of the flight logs, part of the practices that you see these helicopters really going relatively low, but over the Potomac. So this is something very common, being that Joint Base Andrews not that far from DWI or even DCA, otherwise known as Washington Reagan.
Exactly. So the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, earlier today, just within the past hour, released a message. We'll play that for you here in just a second. All of this brought to you by a number of sponsors. Now, the sponsors, of course, are patriotic sponsors and love our country, but also provide us this live coverage. So without them, we wouldn't be able to bring you this live coverage. So we do thank the Colonial Metals Group. All you have to do is go to freegoldguide.com for more information on gold, tax-sheltered IRA, 401k. Colonial Metals Group, you see the QR code right there. And speaking of being tax-free, let's talk about Tax Network USA.
TNUSA.com/RSBN. We have April 15th right around the corner, so settle your back taxes now and don't get, taken advantage of by the IRS. You can call our Patriot friends over at Tax Network USA, 800-357-1415. Protect yourself and keep your assets. You know the IRS has been so emboldened in the last few years, and even President Trump might send them to the border as additional roles other than just taxation. So tnusa.com/RSBN, a great group. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting.
Our third sponsor of the day is Brightcore. So go to mybrightcore.com/RSBN. You see that Kimchi 1 product on the left side of your screen there. Great probiotic for your health, making America healthy again. A great step in the right direction by ordering this wonderful product. Buy 2, get 1 free. mybrightcore.com/RSBN. All right, it is 10:33 Eastern Time as we get ready to go to the White House press briefing room, where we just saw White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt the other day. Now we're going to see the Commander-in-Chief behind that podium. We'll have the entire press conference live, uninterrupted, right here on RSBN Live. A very serious situation, of course, today because of this tragic event that took place yesterday. A lot of questions to be answered, so we'll see how this press conference goes and if President Trump has any more information, which I'm sure he does, being the leader of the free world.
And not much on his schedule today as it's broken down where he will be taking this, and I'm sure questions from the press pool there in town in Washington, D.C., but then later on, lunch with the vice president and signing of more executive orders at 3 o'clock. But this is probably taking up most of the schedule today just to get to the bottom of exactly what happened.
And that's the thing about President Trump. Again, he isn't a career politician. He is the real deal outsider guy asking the same questions that we ask. You know, why, how did this happen? It was a clear night. President Trump said it all on Truth Social. But I think right now, I know we want to know those answers, as do I, but the tragedy of it all, the loss of life, is something that is very, very hard on the American people right now, and a lot of people that are wondering what happened, yesterday. The part of the U.S. skating team, they sent us a statement here at Right Side saying that they can confirm that there were athletes and coaches from the U.S. skating team that's based in Colorado. Some of them were on that plane yesterday for American Airlines. They were flying back from Wichita, Kansas. They had a competition event there. And
Right.
Then all of a sudden, this is what happened. So we are all wondering how it happened.
And Wichita, Kansas itself, a lovely community, very tight-knit, and with many military ties. So this is something that will keep people reeling in the next few days and weeks to come as the NTSB is leading the investigation, and I'm sure with the support and help of the Pentagon and the Department of Transportation as well, just to find out exactly what took place here. Because last night was a very clear day, and this is something that pilots will share, that clear and visibility unlimited. And it seems as if that was the case last night. So this thing is very rare, and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy earlier today in that press conference with other elected officials and Mayor Bowser from D.C. simply stating that we still are the safest transportation hub, especially our flight systems in the United States. These are stories you mostly hear, of course, overseas, but every once in a while you have something like this that you just don't anticipate to happen, and I'm sure that this administration will get to the bottom of it.
So what we know so far from the press conference earlier this morning at DCA at the Ronald Reagan Airport is that the American Airlines pilot has 6 years experience. The first officer had 3 years experience. We don't know many details about the Black Hawk helicopter pilots, except for the fact that actually the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, did say that they have extensive flying experience as well. So
Right.
We just heard that moments ago. So producer, director, if we can go to Pete Hegseth from earlier today, please let us know. Okay, we can go to that. Let's go to okay, they're saying, hold on. We'll go to Pete Hegseth in just a minute, the Secretary of Defense. He actually was sitting at his desk, a very casual moment, but at the end of the day, he wants that information to come out to the American people. So let's go there now.
All right, update this morning. Just got off the phone with the Southcom commander and the chairman, the Joint Chiefs, talking about our efforts at Guantanamo Bay. That is ongoing. We're leaning forward on supporting the president's directive to make sure that we have a location for violent criminal illegals as they are deported out of the country. No one's going to wait on the Defense Department, and we're working that in real time. But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C., and provide a little bit more information as we are actively working to investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers, their families and their communities. As people are notified, I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
And that was, of course, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. They have not informed the next of kin quite yet, so withholding the names. I'm sure that will be released perhaps later today, but it's always good as military protocol to tell family members and loved ones exactly what has happened. And our thoughts and prayers always with the military and the additional 64 civilians, 4 crew, 60 passengers on this American Airlines flight from Wichita, Kansas to our nation's capital, Washington Reagan DCA, tragically losing their lives. Now this moving from a rescue mission to a recovery mission. And we don't know the time nor the hour, Matthew, and that's why our thoughts and prayers are with the family members and the victims.
So just in from the New York Post, they're reporting that 14 of the 64 people that were on the American Airlines plane are from the U.S. skating team. So 14 members of the U.S. skating team were on that flight. And the statement from the U.S. figure skating says that they can confirm that several members of our skating community were sadly aboard Flight 5342 of American Airlines. The quote saying, "We are devastated by this unspeakable tragedy and hold the victims' families closely in our hearts. We will continue to monitor the situation and will release more information as it becomes available." A statement from the U.S. skating team there based in Colorado. As you look at the live picture right now, as it is 10:41 on the East Coast there in the Potomac, and this is where it all happened. There are a number of videos out there from a distance, surveillance cameras showing the tragic explosion and that from last night. And again, it was at 8:48 Eastern time last night when this all unfolded. And then, of course, a lot of people waking up to the news as well, and a tough time for our country as we're going to see and hear from the leader of the country and the leader of the free world, President Trump, right there at that podium at the White House.
You know, this is a moment when President Trump really becomes, again, the comforter in chief. We saw this yesterday when he signed his first bill into law, the Laken-Riley Act, and how Allison Riley, Laken's mother, was so comforted and reassured the American people that this man listens to you, that he keeps his promises, and I'm sure he'll approach this tragedy in the same manner of using common sense, wanting to find out, as we know from the Truth Social post, exactly what happened because of the rarity of these issues. But we know NTSB will be leading this investigation, and the Transportation Department, along with the Pentagon, will be very closely linked in all of this, given the purview and also who was involved.
Hopefully there is common sense coming from those that are in the fake news press in the briefing room and stay on topic with any questions to the president, unlike what happened for the Laken Riley Act when it was signed into law just the other day. So we're hoping that it will just stay on topic here, as this is out of respect, of course, for the families and the victims of this flight, American Airlines flight, and the Army Black Hawk helicopter. Okay, so it's 10:43, a number of sponsors to get to, and thanking them for allowing us to be able to provide you, the viewer, this live coverage right now. So BrightCore, all about making America healthy again. So it's mybrightcore.com. You can get 2 of the Kimchi 1 products right there, and you'll get 1 free. This is all about a great probiotic, gut health, immune support, and anti-aging properties, as you see there on your screen. So that step in the right direction of just becoming more healthy is always good.
Right, and just trying this out is a great idea, because all of the health in your body really truly does start in your gut. It goes all the way up to your head and helps with that mental clarity throughout your workday. Buy 2, get 1 free. Visit mybrightcore.com/RSBN. 50% off right now. A great deal, and proudly made in the USA. So Kimchi 1, something that will really kick off your day, and I think it's as essential as a cup of coffee. You know, some people want to get into their routines. Having this in the morning or even the evening, a great thing for that gut health.
Exactly. So mybrightcore.com, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, as we approach 15 minutes or so out from seeing the president there in the West Wing in that briefing room. Of course, the Oval Office not too far from that press briefing room. I've been in the press briefing room. I know you have too, Robert, but talk to us about the West Wing, though. How far is the Oval Office, or is it just literally 2 steps away right there?
Just a few steps. It's actually interesting because if you are a fan of the show The West Wing from the late 90s, early 2000s, of course it's really built after the Clinton administration. Dee Dee Myers, the former press secretary, fortunately had the opportunity to meet her when I was in college. A great bipartisan person, a Democrat in her own right, but someone who really worked to bridge the gap between both sides of the aisle. She was a consultant on that show. You'd be surprised if you go in there how much of a common office building it looks like. So it's a very intimate space, and if you have the privilege to visit it either on the tour or there during a work day, you might be interested to see who you'll run into, including the president.
Exactly. So that's who we'll see here in just a few minutes. I believe 15 minutes from now, or if he comes out early, we'll see him there, and we'll go live for the entire event for this update, and of course hearing from the president after a tragic event in our country over the Potomac River right there in Virginia. So this airport, Reagan National Airport in the state of Virginia, of course, on the final approach yesterday to runway 33, that's when the collision happened with the Black Hawk helicopter at 8:48 last night. That's the latest we know at this point. Again, if you're just joining us right now, 60 passengers, 4 crew were aboard that plane. 3 soldiers were on the Black Hawk helicopter, and we know that search and rescue efforts have now turned into recovery efforts. So sad, tragic, terrible news, and also we all want to know what happened. President Trump speaking about that on Truth Social straight up last night, so you can check it out if you'd like on the comments there. And then he also was saying God bless the souls as well on the Truth Social statement this morning. But he's going to be stepping out there and talking to us and to let us know what he knows about last night's tragedy.
And what we do know right now, Matthew, is that these were experienced pilots. So this wasn't something where the flight logs were 1 or 2 or 3 flights. This was an annual practice. And if you live in the area or even have visited the Capitol recently, you might be aware that this is rather routine. Or if you live by a military base, you will see these large aircraft and helicopters doing dogfights or even just going again through routine practice missions. And this was the case We do not know the names and ranks yet per Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth because the next of kin have not been notified as of the last hour. I'm sure that the Pentagon will be reaching out to them. In fact, maybe even Secretary Hegseth himself as the new leader at the Pentagon. But this will be something that will cross several agencies. NTSB will be investigating the lead on this. And then, of course, the Transportation Department and the Pentagon, given what was involved.
Speaking of the Department of Transportation, Secretary Sean Duffy just sworn in yesterday by the Vice President, J.D. Vance, to his new role. And then he hears about what happens last night and wakes up and has a press conference with the D.C. officials and airport officials as well, along with the federal government, the NTSB, as they're seeing an aerial look at the site where this all took place over the Potomac River. And of course, once that collision happened, we know that both aircraft went to the water there. Obviously frigid temperatures. There was some ice still along the river there. And also we're told about 300 first responders were there last night, doing the best they could to search and rescue. And now it is now a recovery effort there. In the Potomac. And also, if you're just joining us, Robert and I have been talking about the fact that, and for those of you that have been to Alexandria, Virginia, or in the DC area, if you're right there on the edge of Alexandria, gorgeous town, but also Old Town Alexandria, you can stand right there on the Potomac and you'll be seeing aircraft, commercial jets, fly right down into their final approach, or if they're taking off from Ronald Reagan, right there, helicopters as well. So it's not something that you see way up in the sky, it's just right there within sight. And this is where this all happened, along that pathway.
We even had a moment where I was with the Maverick Pack back in 2023, summertime, and enjoying a lovely evening cruise on the Potomac, really a beautiful evening in our nation's capital. And we saw that the Marine One helicopters practicing in line, literally 4 of them came right over a ship very similar to what you're seeing right there on the Potomac, and they all waved to us. We could see their faces. So this is something that is rather routine, and these are quite experienced pilots. Of course, human error can happen, and I'm sure the NTSB will get to the bottom of this, and something that Secretary Duffy will be on top of, being the new Transportation Secretary.
Exactly, and we know now with someone named Donald J. Trump as the Commander-in-Chief of our country, we know that he is the outsider in the sense of he's not going to be the career politician and say, oh, it's just under investigation. No, he's going to go after the answers to how the heck this could happen. Again, according to the president. Now, I wouldn't say all of what I just said if President Trump didn't post on Truth Social just yesterday things like, the airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. So that kind of thing, if you can look on Truth if you'd like. But yeah, we're going to see hopefully some details. But again, it's that mixed feeling of what happened versus obviously the tragic feeling of what happened. And so we're going to hear from the president here shortly. Again, a number of sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network allowing us to provide you these live pictures here, including Tax Network USA. So it's 800-357-1415. If you missed any back taxes, you can always go to tnusa.com/RSBN. And that number, Bobby, 800-357-1415. It's great to have people that are there to help you out.
Especially with April 15th right around the corner. These are experts at property taxes, state taxes, also federal taxes, and this might be the whole last year of that as President Trump is looking to reform the federal income tax system as it exists. We'll have perhaps the External Revenue Service coming into play, but before that, you need to make sure that you are keeping your assets. The best way to do that, visit tnusa.com/RSBN. Thank you to Tax Network USA, our great partners here at Right Side Broadcasting.
All right, so it's about 9 minutes to the top of the hour here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. This is RSBN Live. As you see, 2 vantage points live in the press briefing room, and also on the bottom left, of course, the Potomac River there. A lot of live pictures, of course, from Washington right now. And of course, that is the Potomac River. So looking forward to hearing from the Commander-in-Chief on his thoughts about how things went and what happened, but also whatever briefing he has received in an intelligence briefing I believe that's just all overall whatever's happening domestically and internationally. We know President Trump gets intelligence briefings pretty much every day, so we'll see what he knows here.
And the Situation Room not too far from also the Brady press briefing room. So that's somewhere they can stage a meeting with intelligence officers, but also, of course, his Oval Office where he can address any issue that comes across his desk. A tragic day in American history, and you don't want to see something like this, especially with the U.S. skating team. I mean, great representatives for us abroad.
Exactly. So the New York Post reporting 14 members of the U.S. skating team were on that American Airlines flight last night, and we're seeing there in the press briefing room a number of the press getting ready to do their different live shots, that kind of thing. But what you'll get here at Right Side Broadcasting Network is straight up common sense and truth. Most of the press in that press briefing room definitely on the left side of the aisle, and but hopefully today they'll just stay on topic. Obviously, this is a very tragic event, and we'll be going live there to the press briefing room as well as soon as President Trump is going on to that podium. And you know how it works, of course, with the press conferences, especially there. There's always that 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning, they kind of let everybody know, and everybody kind of sits down and waits for the commander-in-chief to take to the podium. Now, you can see that even the search and rescue, in the sense of now it's recovery efforts, you can see some vessels out there doing the best they can at this point.
Right, and the sad thing about it is we're not, experts in this realm, but if you just watch the video from last night, it's very hard to watch. It's clearly a big collision. It almost looks as if fireworks were going off over our nation's capital, and our thoughts and prayers are with the victims at this hour. What we do know is that it was 3 military officials on this Black Hawk helicopter, names and ranks being withheld at the moment. We are waiting to see when the Pentagon does release those, but they have to inform next of kin, as Secretary Hegseth mentioned this morning. Also on the American Airlines commercial flight from Wichita, Kansas, 60 civilian passengers along with 4 crew members on board that flight, and not terribly late at night, just before the 9 o'clock hour on the East Coast, but clear, visible, unlimited access really as they were approaching Washington Reagan, but sadly a direct hit, and several lives seemingly lost now as this recovery effort is underway in our nation's capital.
So American Airlines Flight 5342 at 8:48 p.m. last night was heading from Wichita, Kansas, making its final approach to Reagan National Airport, runway 33 in Virginia, then collided with the Army Black Hawk helicopter. Again, a total of 67 people at this point, it looks like have lost their lives. It looks like it's now a recovery effort there, as we hear from the president here in just a minute. One of our other sponsors, thanking them for providing us to be able to bring you this live coverage, but not only that, great products as well. Colonial Metals Group is that organization there, that company. Just go to freegoldguide.com. You'll get one of these right here, all about tax-sheltered IRAs and 401ks. So you'll get this in the mail. Always smart to have that backup plan with gold. Of course, gold is a very high value and always has been. So, all right, so we're about 4 minutes, Robert, from the press briefing there, where President Trump, I believe, will be right on time with this at 11 a.m. To share with us his thoughts about what happened last night, but also anything within the intelligence briefing. Has he received some information that has not been released yet? We'll see.
And his schedule is very clear right now, with this being the highlight. He has a 1:30 Eastern lunch with Vice President J.D. Vance, and then a 3 o'clock meeting to sign executive orders from the Oval Office. So, of course, we'll be here if there's any other breaking news regarding this, but given the fact that he is going to the James Brady press briefing room, likely he does have some answers already as to what has happened and what continues to unfold and what will be an ongoing investigation.
Exactly. Again, it's all about the comms, too, the air traffic control, the FAA, all of the ATC there when it comes to what was being said from air traffic control to the Black Hawk helicopter to the American Airlines flight. Were the pilots being able to communicate with each other through some of those comms before this happened? What were the pilots seeing outside of the front of their windows? I mean, there's all these questions on a very clear night, on a very routine flight for both the American Airlines jet and for the training mission of the Black Hawk. So President Trump calling that out yesterday, he has those questions. Maybe he has some answers now.
Yes, and he would probably have the most up-to-date given his role as Commander-in-Chief. And we've seen him even yesterday when he signed his first bill into law, the Lincoln-Riley Act, how he can be that comforter-in-chief. He really has a way of working with people and putting out that olive branch in more ways than one. This is someone who came to Washington to fix problems. And of course, this True Social post, that what it was all about ultimately. How did this happen? Why did it happen? We'll get to the bottom of it. And it's something innately that's in President Trump about being that problem solver. We see it on so many issues.
Exactly. Again, President Trump saying about an hour ago on Truth Social, I have been fully briefed on the terrible accident which just took place at Reagan National Airport. May God bless their souls. Thank you for the incredible work being done by our first responders. He said he's monitoring the situation and will provide more details as they arise, and that could be happening in just about 2 minutes from now on this very, very tragic news day, and also seeing Kash Patel when it comes to the Senate hearing. That's happening. Tulsi Gabbard will have a hearing today. There's just a lot going on. We've heard from the Secretary of Defense today. We've heard from the Secretary of the Department of Transportation today. So a lot going on. We're covering it here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, but at the end of the day, this is the unfortunate breaking news that we're talking about when it comes to things that affect our country. This is a tragedy. We want to know what happened. All of us, most of us, have flown in planes before. Let's be real. We've got CPAC coming up. We're going to be heading to CPAC, a number of us at the network. So it's part of what we do. And so definitely we want to know what happened last night. Again, at 8:48 last night is when it all happened. We're about a minute away from this press conference here. Robert, do you think, and I hope that this happens, the press will just stay on topic at this point?
Well, you never know with them. You know, we've seen the last couple of days now with Caroline's press conference, also into the bill signing yesterday, where sometimes they will get accusatory or even off topic. We hope that it will stay solely on this, because this really changes everything throughout the day. Of course, we have Senate hearings going on in conjunction with that. Kash Patel for the FBI director role is underway right now, and he opened up in prayer as he took that oath to tell the truth before the committee. So a lot going on in Washington, but this really slows down the day. And you want to focus on not only the lives lost and the prayers for the victims and their family members, but also how we can assure, to your point, Matthew, that this does not happen again, because we know so many people going in and out of Washington Reagan or BWI on a regular basis, going to our nation's capital. So many of our friends in the media and elected officials as well. But Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy this morning with Mayor Bowser reassuring the community that America is still the safest country for air transportation. So we'll see as that evolves.
And adding to that region, Dulles Airport. So three airports right in miles, basically, of each other. Right. Baltimore, Reagan, and then Dulles. So a very high trafficked area when it comes to flight patterns and and the such things like that. But the point is, it was a routine flight yesterday. This was all routine, and something went obviously wrong. And that's where we're going to hear from President Trump here. He'll share with us the latest he knows. And of course, if he only has so much information, he will have to say what will happen with the investigation. We'll have to wait and see, that kind of thing. But you're taking a look there again at the Potomac River, where this all happened just several hours ago, looking at 8:48 Eastern last night. So just about 26 hours or so. As we get ready to go to the press briefing room there in Washington, you can see a helicopter there flying in the foreground of your screen. Just looking around, you see the vessel there, the boat. You see a number of different things going on there. That is the rescue efforts, or the recovery efforts at this point, as it is 2 minutes after the hour. Again, this is RSBN Live. A lot of news happening today. We know that Kash Patel, again, is hopefully going to be the FBI director after today's hopeful confirmation, and then we'll see when he would be sworn in. We'll bring you that live coverage. Again, for those of you just joining us, the American Airlines Flight 5342 was heading from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C. there. And was attempting to land, it was a final approach there to Ronald Reagan Airport. That's when the collision happened at 8:48 in the morning. So 67 people seem to have lost their lives in this tragic situation last night. And again, 14 members of the U.S. skating team a part of this flight. And again, to the pilots, if we look at the pilot of the American Airlines jet, he had 6 years experience, the first officer 3 years. This according to officials that shared this information with all of us during a press conference earlier this morning that we aired, of course, right here on the network. So yeah, we'll see what happens as we're taking a look at various parts of the Potomac right there. And I believe that is the Jefferson Memorial. You saw the Washington Memorial as well, and you see a plane taking off right now. That is the airport. That is Ronald Reagan. That is Reagan National Airport. Right there as a plane takes off. Now, the reason why the focus is happening on that plane is because we were told at 11 a.m. Eastern time that the flights would now resume at the airport at DCA. So that's most likely why we're seeing that. Well, just imagine being in the airport too. I mean, dealing with all of what you saw last night and then being on a flight this morning, one of the first flights out. That's definitely concerning. Let's just be straight up.
Oh, absolutely, and very somber as well, because again, this doesn't happen on a regular basis, especially in the United States. So it's always a cause of concern when a tragedy like this does strike. And we do know, I think the most recent, at least in the United States, was, of course, Captain Sully Sullenberger, who was the hero of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, crash landing in the Hudson River outside of New York City. And we know that that was a media firestorm that led to a blockbuster film starring Tom Hanks, and the NTSB really, that went on weeks and weeks of investigations, and the captain, who truly was a hero and exonerated for his efforts, was really put through the ringer and became a household name as a result. Sadly, we won't have that testimony necessarily in this case, because it looks as if 67 brave souls have perished, and American souls at that, including some of our, I believe, Russian friends who maybe were associated with skating as well on an international level. So again, in a beautiful sport, and it's sad to lose such representatives. They're diplomats in their own right, being that it's a graceful, beautiful winter sport that brings so much of the world together. And to lose such innocent life is always a tragedy.
Exactly right. So we're seeing a number of commercial jets there getting ready to take off from Reagan National Airport. The airport just opened literally 5 minutes ago since last night's tragic event. We saw a few people walking into the press briefing room there just a minute ago. We'll soon hear from the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, on what he knows and his thoughts of what happened last night as we take a look at the tarmac there and the getting ready to go on the taxiway and then the runway there, live right now at 11:06 Eastern time. Again, these situations becoming not only national but international news when you have something like this happen, when you have a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter colliding with an American Airlines jet last night at 8:48, clear skies once again, final approach into Reagan National Airport for that American Airlines plane. It was just getting ready to land, and somehow there's this collision that happens. So it's really tough too when you're flying in and out of DCA now, just because of what happened last night, because we do know that there are aircraft, there are helicopters doing various training missions. That is very concerning. So I know that President Trump and the DOT and the DOD are really going to collaborate and say, okay, let's figure out what happened here, and then maybe make any changes if needed.
You have to at this point, because so much commerce comes through here, including our military readiness, just being our nation's capital as well. But if you live in the area or have visited recently, you probably have seen many helicopters flying over your head or different military aircraft as well as commercial. So we already know that there's that closed airspace, right over the White House as well, but still the purview you can see very closely as the camera might pan as the Southwest Airlines flight is about to take off here. Not too far in the distance, the Washington and Jefferson Memorials, and also in the distance, our beautiful White House, where President Trump will be addressing a press briefing this morning in the James Brady press briefing room in the West Wing. And we'll see what up-to-date details he has, as he said on Truth Social, that he has been fully briefed on this situation, and his thoughts and prayers as well with the victims from last night.
Let's take a look there, as this is, I believe, the first commercial aircraft to be taking off right now. I believe that looks like a Southwest plane from this vantage point. I have to look a lot closer than what I'm seeing from here, but still, this is looks like the first plane that will be taking off, and this aerial view that we're getting is, I believe, of a news chopper that is there. As you see the plane now taking off, this is the first one out of DCA since last night's tragedy. And you can see, there you go, the Washington Monument, as you were just saying, Robert, and DC in the background, and of course Virginia and the whole region there, as that plane lifts off for the first time since last night's tragedy. As we take a look at the Potomac, where, again, look how close that vantage point is the first time I'm seeing it, of how close the recovery operation and efforts are taking to the actual airport.
Right.
I didn't know it was that close. That's pretty close right there.
It seems as if it was seconds away from actually making the landing, but as you know, it's some of these helicopters can fly quite low right over the Potomac, and this is a regular route that you will see. And the time that I was on there in the summer of 2023, just on a conference cruise, they came right over our heads. The helicopters that serve as Marine One, 4 of them right along the side, and the pilots actually waved to us. I mean, these are some of the best pilots in all of the world, and we know that each pilot yesterday of the American Airlines flight and also the Black Hawk helicopter had quite the experience themselves. These were not someone who were new pilots per se, but some years of experience under their belts.
Exactly. So you're seeing another live vantage point right there as we look to the podium and the press briefing room. Once again, we saw White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt there just the other day, hitting a grand slam, standing for President Trump and we the people. Now we're going to see the Commander-in-Chief for the first time as the 47th president standing behind that podium and sharing an opening statement of his thoughts, and then, of course, possibly taking some questions there from the press. Another sponsor here at the network, thanking Colonial Metals Group for providing us this live coverage today. So Colonial Metals Group, this is the free gold guide. All you got to do is go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN for more information.
And scan your code right there. Shield your savings now. And of course, you know of Warren Buffett's $277 billion warning that we are in a red hole right now in a national deficit. And the best way to hedge your bets against inflation, gold, silver, tangible metals. And if you scan the QR code, it gets you that beautiful guide with no obligation. Just gives you options for you and your family to diversify, whether it's a 401k, IRA program, or properties or assets. Adding gold, silver, and precious metals to your portfolio is a must-do in the times that we live in. So Colonial Metals Group, thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting.
It's after 11 a.m. on the East Coast. It is Thursday, January 30th, and this is Robert McNeely and Matthew Alvarez as we get ready to go to the briefing room there. Again, earlier, if you're just joining us now, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, speaking about some details about the situation there. Director, if we go to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, of course, if the President steps out, we can cut right back to that press briefing. So please let me know if we can go to the Secretary of Defense once again for that couple-minute update that he shared of the information that he knows about the fact that the pilots have extensive experience and other information. So let's go to that Secretary of Defense statement from a couple hours ago.
Update this morning, just got off the phone with the Southcom commander and the chairman, the Joint Chiefs, talking about our efforts at Guantanamo Bay. That is ongoing. We're leaning forward on supporting the president's directive to make sure that we have a location for violent criminal illegals as they are deported out of the country. No one's going to wait on the Defense Department, and we're working that in real time. But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C., and provide a little bit more information as we are actively working to investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers, their families and their communities. As people are notified, I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
All right, so the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, newly at that position, already getting right into the information there of what he knows. And speaking of that, the Department of Transportation, Sean Duffy, earlier in a D.C. press conference this morning, already out there saying the same thing, where they want to figure out what happened. And it's 11:15 right now in the morning. We're waiting for President Trump as well. So a lot of questions to be answered as to what happened there. This is not only for the victims that have lost their lives and the families. That is the number one priority right now, is why did that happen to these great people? But it's also for the future people that are going to be flying in this area. Like, this is a really big deal, and we got to hear from the president. That's why he is going to be coming out of the Oval Office there and sharing some more details with us.
And it's reassuring that DCA has reopened Washington Reagan International Airport at 11 a.m. Eastern. We saw a couple of Southwest flights, the first to go out after this tragedy. So operations continuing. That's positive to see. But then you can see the Coast Guard and other officials in recovery mode now. So it's now a recovery mission. It's very likely that all 67 souls involved in this horrible tragedy have now perished, but we're hoping and praying for a miracle. Of course, you will have NTSB as the lead per Mayor Bowser's comments this morning at her press conference, along with United States Senators Mark Warner and Tim Kaine in attendance, Congressman Byers of Virginia, as well, with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy addressing the public, with the CEO of DCA as well. So more forthcoming as we find out more. This breaking news at RSBN Live. I'm Robert McNeely, with, of course, the magnificent Matthew Alvarez. A sad tragedy this morning for our country. You never want to see the loss of life, especially so many souls on board the commercial American Airlines flight that were U.S. skaters, and a great diplomatic sport in its own right. To see them perish, we've had comments as well from their headquarters out in Colorado. A sad day for sports world and for our entire country.
14 members of the U.S. Skating team lost their lives last night. That, according to the New York Post, also receiving that statement from the U.S. skating team in Colorado, confirming that there were lives lost. So then many more. Who were the people? That's the question right now. Who were the other people that were on that tragic flight last night? Who were the 3 service members who lost their lives? And how in the world did this happen? What happened? It was a direct, as you said, it was a direct hit. Mm-hmm. This wasn't a plane clipping, a helicopter or vice versa. This was a direct hit yesterday. And so that's why President Trump on Truth Social had many questions last night. If you guys want to take a look at that statement from him, he's asking that. He's saying, hey, it was a clear night. Why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen when it comes to the helicopter? And so it's just, obviously too early to tell. These were just initial reactions that all of us have. That's what we love about President Trump. He is that guy that is an outsider that says, hey, what happened there? It's the common sense approach to figuring out what the heck happened. So we're going to hear from him here shortly as we're taking that live look there on the bottom right of your screen of the aerial pool feed that we have as they continue those recovery efforts. And this morning, the amount of families and friends and coworkers and others that are getting these calls and are shocked because all they knew is their loved one was on a flight on their way home and something happened. Something tragic happened. And so if I were them, I would want the same thing. I would want to know, how in the world did this happen? And so that's why President Trump is getting the briefing and is going to give us a briefing on it as well, because the American people want to know. And also, as we follow this story, of course, Kash Patel is over at the Senate confirmation hearing. We're waiting to see that take place when it comes to the FBI job there. So a lot going on this morning, but of course, waiting on the commander-in-chief there in Washington.
And very appropriate, Mr. Patel this morning opening up in prayer after taking that oath to swear the truth before the committee, which every witness and every nominee for a cabinet position will do. So that's something that did happen this morning, and that gloom hanging over, of course, the committee hearing in that regard. But business does need to continue in our nation's capital with that. So again, we're not going to speculate here. We want to bring you everything in real time. We are the real news here at Right Side Broadcasting. And you can see on the split screen there's been a release by the White House in a statement from President Trump about being fully informed on what has taken place and if anything shall arise, how to, it looks like, reform any situation and solve these problems quickly. We have many departments working on this, from federal, state to local authorities, given that this corridor of D.C. is Virginia. It's the district itself, and then, of course, Maryland as well.
Exactly. Awaiting that email here into our email inboxes, as well as we saw the statement there from the president. I'm not sure if you put that on Truth Social as well. I'll double check that quickly. I don't see it at this point, but we will get that to you as soon as we get it. As you see, that is the Potomac River there. That's right there in partly Virginia, then of course over to the District of Columbia. Beyond that are the Washington Memorials, the Jefferson Memorial, and then even a little further to the left would be the Lincoln Memorial. And then way to the right of that screen is the U.S. Capitol building. And there's President Trump. Let's go there now.
And their families, please. Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast, it was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly, and we are a country of really, we are in mourning. This has really shaken a lot of people, including people, very sadly, from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people, unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, it was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas. But we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. You have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's Diversity and Inclusion Hiring Plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's Diversity and Inclusion Hiring Plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run the Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive to white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray, and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else that came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, you had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, "Do you see?" He was talking about, "Do you see him?" But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said, "Follow him in." And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine. Follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter. I mean, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. Thus far, I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. It did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height, because if it was at the same height, you could have gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower. But it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in an identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made. And you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. We're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position, and I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have. And then they changed it back. That was Biden to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, that was, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the President's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We've had a whole of government response, local, state, federal. And when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency: the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible, with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, a young captain, staff sergeant, and a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Blackhawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
Very much. JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means, on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C., is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering the fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
You're asking me a question about Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it. But it is a very serious problem.
Do you even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed? And you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
Are you blaming
Please.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who is at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was the crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideway directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher. So if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines standard, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was a helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play, and they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger
There
jet?
were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive
Not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order. You say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government? What plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. Ice Skating Committee was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real. But the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration
Nice and
too.
easy.
So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in, 2 days, 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It's on the website.
Please. Quiet, quiet.
Welcome back to the. I'm sorry. You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any
I heard
indication?
that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. I have a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations. And the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good. That was really good.
When I applied to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training that was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You
that?
don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know. But the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I've got a question about the.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir.
I made the reforms, actually.
What is your message?
3 days ago, I made them.
Yes, sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Defense Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were. And that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay?
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitated to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have the highest level people. We've already hired some of the people that you've already hired for that position long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. You know, they like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. Now, with that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much,
President Trump handling the press like the boss he is, of course, sharing the options of what could have caused this tragedy. The president in the White House press briefing room. We saw the vice president, Secretary of Transportation, and the Secretary of Defense, Robert.
Right, and something that they are pledging to the American people to reform if necessary, the DEI practicing of hiring folks who really aren't qualified for certain positions. Of course, President Trump reiterated in that conference that it's not necessarily the reason. It could have been the helicopter pilot itself with the Black Hawk helicopter. He was saying also that it seemed as if the American Airlines pilot was doing everything according to plan. So this will be an investigation led by NTSB, but of course, getting to the bottom of it very quickly. And Sean Duffy and Pete Hegseth, both Secretaries of Defense and Transportation, pledging that the best and the brightest will always be hired within the ranks of the federal government. And of course, President Trump really leading that conference with confidence and the fact that he wants a merit-based system across all hiring in the federal government.
President Trump saying, as one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us. That's a quote from that press briefing as we're about the top of the hour here. A lot of news coming out of that press conference. Of course, the president commenting on DEI hires, but also outside of that, the president saying there was a problem with the pilot of the helicopter. For some reason, there weren't adjustments made, he said. The helicopter could have gone up or down, the president said, to miss that American Airlines flight. But for some reason, he said, it just kept going. So a lot of news out of that. Again, he's bringing the options to the table of what could have happened there as this investigation unfolds. And again, handling the press like the boss that he is. You know, shutting them down, especially when they're coming at him with some dumb questions. But anyway, so it's 11:58 a.m. Producer, do we go now to our sponsors and we'll move on to our next coverage? All right, let's go to the Colonial Metals Group. All of these great sponsors, first of all, are awesome products.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, without them, we don't provide this live coverage for you. So thanks to them for that. Let's go to Colonial Metals Group. This is that free gold guide that you'll get. All you have to do is go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. This is a nice looking guide, and this will help you along the way.
Absolutely fantastic, and no obligation here. Just scan for your savings now with that QR code, and you can look at ways of diversifying your 401k or IRA, in addition to properties and assets, but gold, silver, precious metals needed for every portfolio given the inflation and the national debt. We are truly in a crisis financially in this country, so hedge your bets against inflation and save for your retirement. Colonial Metals Group, thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting.
Let's go to Tax Network USA. You'll see the number on your screen in just a second, 800-357-1415, tnusa.com/RSBN. You've heard it before. I'll say it again. If you're just joining us, I mean, this place is awesome. They're patriotic people that just want to help you when it comes to any questions from back taxes, maybe you missed a few filings, or coming up with the April session there. If you have any questions, they can help you out, especially you don't want to have the IRS on your mind. You just want to take care of everything, of course, as this great group will help you do that. 800-357-1415. And then we also have BrightCore.
Love BrightCore. It's all about financial health, but how do you get there? It's through the gut, because the gut will affect every aspect about your day, whether it's at work or spending time with your family and friends. BrightCore, made in the USA, has Kimchi 1. Buy 2, get 1 free with RSBN. If you visit mybrightcore.com/RSBN, call 888-722-0936. This is all about gut health and immune support and anti-aging properties. This supplement really needed for you, whether you start off with it in the morning or even in the evening. It's as important as that first fresh cup of coffee to get your day started. So highly recommended. BrightCore, made in the USA.
So you just buy 2, get 1 free. Great deal and great people over there at BrightCore. Thank you guys for being sponsors here at the network. My Pillow is also a sponsor, of course. The mega sale, there it is, promo code RSBN. Towels for that price, $29.98. Great price there. The flannel sheets as well. So just go to mypillow.com/RSBN for some huge discounts there. Also, if you'd like to donate to Right Side, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. We also have a newsletter, rsbnnetwork.com/newsletter, for more information when it comes to America First events and details right into your email inbox. So it's the website you see right there, RSBN Network, or rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. Also, it is the top of the hour right now. The stream that is happening at this point is the Kash Patel Senate confirmation hearing. So you might want to go over there and check it out as we get ready to see Kash Patel doing great, as he will be most likely the FBI lead guy in Washington, D.C. So, Robert, like to close it out?
Sure. President Trump, of course, in that press conference ending that he wants these nominees confirmed as soon as possible, and that Democrats have dragged their feet in that regard because of emergencies like this. That's why we have this cabinet, to address problems like we saw with the tragedy yesterday. But stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting. We'll go over to that other feed. And again, our thoughts and prayers with everyone affected by this terrible tragedy yesterday over our nation's capital, as President Trump has pledged to get to the bottom of this, in addition to the lead agents over at the NTSB. For the magnificent Matthew Alvarez, stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting as we join the other feed. But have a wonderful day, and we'll catch up with you very soon.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra MyPillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic MyPillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen size MyPillow for just $18.88. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size MyPillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.